I have to call it the Saudi lollipop, which is 1 million barrel of reduction for the start that starts at the 1st of July, and that million is also extendable.
Well, I'm sure you understand that OPEC is all about ensuring market stability and then trying to see that productions are such that the market does not get volatile or the market does not get oversaturated, because oil production is all about numbers, and how we are able to run these numbers across countries helps us to maintain market visibility, market stability, and then consistency of flow across board. So what we've been able to achieve at this 189 meeting is basically looking at 186th meeting is looking at our numbers. You know, the quotas as have been provided by OPEC, especially for 2023. We've been able to look at countries that have been able to meet their production quotas and those that are struggling to meet up production quotas. And then, as you know, Nigeria has been struggling, especially because of the security challenges in the Niger Delta, which has adversely impacted heavily on our ability to meet up our quota, but which in the past months we have seen quite, some very good response from our security teams, and then we've seen productions rising. So basically, the whole idea of cutting off here and adding up there, and it's just to ensure that the market remains stable, you know, to avoid any forms of either volatilities or any forms that could actually cause the market to dip. We had that a few years ago, 2021 precisely, and I think the whole idea of this meeting and going forward to also put forward projections that are reasonable to ensure that we do not see that dip again.
Based on the new targets became an issue which was somewhat complicated by the fact that many African countries that had lower production in the last 3 months obviously would now have lower baselines based on the agreed method for calculating baselines. On the issue on the cuts, that was sorted out, one, by Saudi Arabia agreeing to about 1 million barrels per day voluntary cuts in July, and the thinking is that we will not get more voluntary cuts apart from Saudi Arabia, although they said that could be extended in months to come. But the issue of the broader cuts will kick in January 2024. They have agreed to reduce their production from 41.8 million barrels per day, I believe, to 40.4 million barrels per day by January 2024. That's about 1.3 million barrels per day difference. Now, the big issue is how do you share those 1.3 million barrels per day? And that's where the debate came in. If you used historical performance of countries like Nigeria, if they allocated those cuts based on the historical performance and the changes to the baseline, Nigeria will have got just barely 1.38 million barrels per day. Obviously, the Nigerians are not happy with that for two reasons. One, they believe the last 3 months for which this calculation was derived is not adequate to establish the capacity of what is the potential of Nigeria's production, and the argument is that they're going to be doing much, much better in the next 3 months. And OPEC was good to concede to the fact that let's have an independent assessment of Nigeria's production, and let's see where it will stand. And there would be, of course, need to revise as that is done. Mind you, all these cuts don't come into place until January 2024. Talking to NNPC, they believe that Nigeria's quota will be about 1.587 million barrels per day after the revisions have been done, and that's without condensates. If you add condensates, we're talking about 2 million barrels per day thereabouts. So that, you could say, is optimism, but we have to wait until this assessment is done. There are 3 important. We could actually need even more cuts. I think that will be World War IV, staged here in Vienna. If this was this difficult, imagine coming together to agree even more cuts in the context of the dynamics that eventually unfolds. Let me end by saying the message for Nigeria is that Nigeria has been disadvantaged, in my view, from its poor performance in the last 3 months in terms of their production, and the need for them to improve their competitiveness by showing that they can produce much, much more has become really a burning platform for the new incoming administration. And one hopes that indeed they will be able to achieve some of these aspirations to improve production. Otherwise, it would certainly be a downward revision, a much more downward revision than they're anticipating. The NNPC executives who are here have told me that they're very confident that they will be able to achieve these improvements in production. OPEC Plus, however, I don't believe.
Plus was needed, and OPEC Plus is absolutely needed. We need an entity that can help balance oil markets. We've seen the big oscillations, especially after COVID, of the oil price, which is neither good for producers nor is it good for consumers, because if the price goes too low, obviously it's very bad for producers. They can't get the investment in. If it gets too high, it's bad for consumers. But the worst thing is if we have these oscillations, because let's say you are an airline. When your operating oil is between 30% and 70% of your operating cost, and it goes up and down very often, you cannot plan. So in the sense of good planning, we do need OPEC Plus to help balance the market. We also, with the US having become such a major producer, need a counterbalance, and that's exactly where OPEC Plus is very helpful to have a counterbalance. You don't want just one entity to dominate the market or one country to dominate the market, and with OPEC Plus you have 23 countries who can agree on things and help balance the market. So that is essentially why I do think that we absolutely and unequivocally need OPEC Plus, and why there's a bright future for OPEC Plus. We've had OPEC for 60 years now, and there will be many more years for OPEC.